ABC Wednesday.
Y'all complain all day. We want books. We want paper towels in the classroom. Bet you want raises too.
I'm still waiting on the paper towels.
Abbott Elementary returns with the new season.
We asked the district for more after-school programs. They gave us $50 for class pets instead.
Critics cheer. Abbott Elementary continues to be one of the funniest and most beloved shows on TV.
What y'all doing out there?
Taking bribes.
Proud of y'all.
Abbott Elementary. Season premiere Wednesday, 9:30, 8:30 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
My name is Lorne Michaels. I'm the producer of Saturday Night.
The whole night?
Yeah, the whole night.
Based on the insane true story of the first time Saturday Night went live.
You ordered a llama?
Yeah, we all decided it was much funnier than a donkey.
Saturday Night, rated R, now playing exclusively in theaters.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have gone under the radar and passed most people by. Today, I'm going to be discussing a film that is a little more recent than ones I usually talk about, and that is going to be this year's Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, directed by George Miller, co-written by him and Nicola Thoris, starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Ayala Brown, along with Chris Hemsworth, in the sequel or prequel spin-off to Mad Max Fury Road. And joining me to talk about this is a good friend of mine, Marion. How's it going, Marion?
So far, so good. How are you?
Doing well. And I, of course, am the host, Derek McDuff. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one because, like I said, I usually give things time to develop as underrated movies. Usually, you got to give something a year, maybe a lot more, to say whether or not something's underrated or not. But I feel like this one, it kind of already, it did really bad at the box office. It's kind of already, it's already out on streaming and everything, and the Academy Awards haven't happened yet, but this is not on a lot of shortlists for really any. I'm sure it'll get some technical awards, but unlike Fury Road, people aren't talking about George Miller. People aren't talking about Anya Taylor-Joy getting nominated, which I'm kind of bummed. I think she's great. And then Chris Hemsworth also. So not really any Oscar buzz surrounding this. Huge bomb at the box office. And I've been thinking about it a lot recently. With some recent episodes, I've kind of talked about some things surrounding it. And I was like, it's my show. I can do it. I can cover this movie if I want to. So here we are talking about Furiosa. Marion, just a couple months ago, you and I watched this movie in theater. We watched it in the true IMAX, right? over there at the Spectrum?
Yeah, we did. Yep.
Yeah. So, we had a really good discussion about it afterwards. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna bring Marion on to talk about this movie with me. So I don't know. What did you think about the movie, Furiosa?
I really liked it. It's probably my favorite movie of the year so far because it is only September.
Right.
I think.
Yes, this will release in October, but yes, we're...
Okay, yeah, sorry. I don't know how time works. Much like people who live in the wasteland, it doesn't mean anything to me.
Furiosa knew that it was 7,000 days, give or take, since she was taken, which I thought was impressive because I did rewatch Mad Max right after this. But sorry, go on.
There's a lot of wiggle room with the phrase give or take, But... yeah, no, I really liked it. I will fully admit I don't like it as much as Fury Road, which to me is just a perfect film. But I mean, I give this a 9 out of 10 as compared to the 10 out of 10 I give Fury Road because I'm just a sucker for a simplistic action movie. And that plot is just a giant U-turn. And then this one was we're going to just go for it, right? We're going to just do this entire character's life basically. And I love it. I love Chris Hemsworth is just having a blast with his fake nose. I love that we get the origin story of the organic mechanic and some of these other side characters that just are sort of there in Fury Road, the people eater. It's fucking awesome. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah, no, when we were talking about our favorite movies of the year so far the other day, and you said Fury Road, which is definitely it's there's a few contenders I think for me so far this year, but this is right up there with all of them. It might be movie of the year when I make Movies of the Year, we'll see. But yeah, was really an incredible movie, and it is, yeah, like you said, I don't think it's quite as good as Fury Road. That's just such an impossible bar to crest. I feel like it's like for me, like you said, that this is a 9 out of, like for me this is still a 10 out of 10. It's just not like the other one's just a slightly better 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's like a 10.1 out of 10.
Right, it's like, how I like Majora's Mask more than Ocarina of Time. Both perfect games, but one is just a little more perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really, really dug this movie because on the surface it is, very similar to Fury Road. There's like you said, there's all these characters and stuff. The wasteland looks similar in a way that the Mad Max movies haven't been necessarily in the past. They all kind of feel very, very different. Mm-hmm. But on a deeper level, like you said, this movie is very different structurally than Fury Road because, like you said, Fury Road is just such a straightforward and then straight back, I guess, action movie where it's just like here's a story. It takes place over a couple days, and it just goes at a clip. Whereas this is like a fucking epic, right? That spans like 20 years. You're seeing like the whole history of like this character, of this whole like Chris Hemsworth's like tribe. There's all these different like factions and stuff. I love that the Octoboss, like I'm like, what the fuck is this dude's deal? He fucking rule. Like, he's just this guy with like a big octopus thing that like kite, and then he's got these horns, and because he works for Dementis, but then he breaks off from him when Dementis starts being a real son of a bitch and killing his guys as part of that whole ruse. There's just so many like moving parts of this, and it stretches over this very long time period, and you're getting all of this really cool information. So it for me hits some of the same things that I love about Fury Road, but also I love a like long, cool, epic film. A great streamlined, just 2-hour action film is great, but I also love like a 2.5-hour epic that just tells you the story of this bizarre world that you're living in. And it's this one, much like I think that 20,000 Years of Longing was also in chapters. It was definitely episodic like this, but if you get to the different parts, you kind of, all right, here's the beginning, here's the middle, and throughout that, you just get so many great set pieces. We were kind of texting about that before, about how many incredible parts are in this movie.
Yeah, and I really like how it sort of expands the world of Mad Max. Like, I like that you get to see, the Bullet Farm and Gastown, just these places that were, throwaway lines in Fury Road, and suddenly they're fully realized places that Dementis shows up and fucks up because he's a horrible boss. Like, he's great when you're on the move, but you put him in one place and he's just a dum-dum. And I like the contrast between like him as a warlord and why am I drawing a blank right now? Immortan Joe. Because like Immortan Joe just realized to stay in one place you create a cult of personality, and Dementis just couldn't. He could control factions when moving, but not sedentary. Right. But yeah, I love how it. Sometimes when you have a prequel that expands a universe, it kind of sort of diminishes it, and I feel like this didn't do that. If that makes any sense, like you see too much of stuff, and it sort of takes away some of the magic from the original. And this, in my opinion, didn't do that. It expanded on it in a way that was very satisfying.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think a big reason that it does feel like that, because a lot of times in prequels you're watching them, you're just like kind of like waiting for like, okay, when are they gonna do the thing? In this one, it's like that Furiosa is gonna have her arm come off or whatever, like all these beats that are gonna happen because it's a prequel, and you're just kind of like waiting around for it. But in this one, I kind of like even forgot that like Furiosa loses her arm until like that moment happens. Like, oh right, yeah, okay, she's just got one arm. And I think the reason that it all feels so of a piece, and not like, I think that a big problem that prequels will run into a lot is that they're finding ways to explain these things that never had answers. It's like, okay, well, how did she lose her arm? Or what was the relationship like? Like, how did her mother get taken? Because that's something she mentions in Fury Road. She's like, my mother got taken on the third day. I was kidnapped as a child. And those scenes, because I did watch it back to back in preparation for this, and like those scenes really hit after watching Furiosa. And the reason is because because of the 15-year development period for Fury Road, this script for this movie was done before they shot Fury Road.
Mhm.
Charlize Theron read it as part of her character. So it's not like, okay, we invented all this new stuff for the character to kind of explain her. They would do for like, what was Anakin Skywalker like as a little kid? Well, now we've got to come up with him being like a pod racer or whatever, And that kind of stuff can feel tacked on because it was never there in the original text. Whereas this, it was there the whole time. This is not something that they made up later on. It was something that was always subtext. And that's something that a lot of the characters had in Fury Road, but particularly, with Furiosa being so important and, them wanting to make this movie for a long time. It was going to be a movie like shot back to back at first, and then it was going to be an anime, and then eventually it ended up being what it was. So yeah, I think this movie had a very unique development, if that makes sense.
It did. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And honestly, if you think about it, like Furiosa is kind of the main character in Fury Road, right? Like
Yeah.
Max is just a guy who wanders in, sort of does stuff begrudgingly, and then wanders out. And
Yeah.
that's just what he does. And yeah, so it's kind of cool that all those, little seeds like her shotgun and all that stuff were seeded into Fury Road and paid off here in a way that wasn't grating,
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like in Solo when you find out like how he got all his like gear or whatever, and that like little cheese, like it works here, and it doesn't feel like it's.
You don't have a scene where someone's like, "This little kid's furious. We'll call her Furiosa,"
Yeah, Furiosa.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
no.
like that fucking Solo scene.
Yes, exactly. Han Solo. Yeah, great stuff.
Way to rub
with
it in that he doesn't have any friends. Fuck you, random Imperial guy.
Which is apparently like that's one of the things that sold Disney on making the movie was that exchange, which I think is insane.
That is bonkers.
But yeah, no. Yeah, this movie obviously, Star Wars is such a Star Wars is huge, and Mad Max is huge. Like people call Mad Max. I think Chris Hemsworth, in fact, was like, yeah, Mad Max is like Australia's Star Wars. And I think one of the things that happened with this movie, why it did underperform a little bit, is because Mad Max has always been very culturally relevant, and it's been like it did very well at the Oscars, and got all those nominations, and it's a beloved movie. They've never been like huge draws, and so
No, it makes total sense that Furiosa failed at the box office because Mad Max Fury Road didn't do very well at the box office, and this is 9 years later. So
exactly, yeah.
It's sad, but it's
spin-off.
Understandable.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think Mad Max 5 or like the Mad Max prequel they might have done a little better because it's still Mad Max, but it was actually the first ever Mad Max movie to open #1 at the US box office. It did not hold that for long. It beat out Garfield barely, and then Garfield just beat it all the next weeks, which is really kind of a bummer. So I'm hoping that maybe this movie gets a second life like some of the Mad Max movies have done in the past, but yeah, it was never going to do well at the box office, but I think even it underperformed what expectations were. It cost a shit ton of money, so it had to make a shit ton of money to even break even.
Yeah, sort of like what happened with The Fall Guy. It just couldn't make up for its giant budget.
Right, and even The Fall Guy beat this movie, so it did not do well.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because that 20-minute action scene where you first sort of are introduced Praetorian Jack is as good as anything that's in Fury Road. I love the little touches that they have in here, like how they get reinforcements onto the war rig and Piss Boy, like that poor guy.
Drink my piss.
I would need a new job, but I love how literal his job title is. It's so sad. Poor little guy.
The Wasteland. That is, yeah. But yeah, that scene. It's phenomenal, and I think there's like 3 or 4 scenes in this movie that are just like you said, are as good or better than anything in Fury Road. That scene is kind of like, it reminds me a lot of the last action scene, like the kind of action finale in Fury Road. And I love that, it does add some stuff like, those guys going up in like the parachutes and stuff, but that scene is great. But the 2 standout scenes for me I think, are the Bullet Farm, which is just like I've never seen anything like that. Just like the way, like the levels that they're on, and like she's sniping him, and then he's got the rocket
Mhm.
launcher, and then Praetorian Jack's driving the thing, and things are exploding. They have to get out, and like it's just so it like really heightens or highlights how George Miller is just the best director of an action movie, even into his like 70s and 80s and stuff like that. It is wild. And then that first scene too, that whole first 20 minutes, that chapter 1 or whatever, where
Mhm.
it's just Furiosa's mom, who's played by I want to, oh my gosh, I had her name in my head, but Charlie Fraser, who, by the way, this is her second ever movie.
Huh.
She was in this and Anyone But You, and those are the only movies she's been in. She plays like the hot ex-girlfriend of Glenn Powell in Anyone But You that just like shows up topless on the beach for no reason.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Australia makes sense.
right, exactly. But like she's so fucking rad. I was instantly like, dude, Furiosa's mom is like my new favorite character ever. She's such a fucking badass. Like she's just like going out there, that chase scene, because it just
Mhm.
kind of keeps going and going and going, and then stops for a second. They get to the town or whatever, and then they roll out. And I love that like she's rolling out and her backlights on. She just keeps fucking going, and they just see like her disappear, and they're Chris Hemsworth and people are kind of looking like, what the fuck, dude? What the hell? So yeah, I really dug the action in this movie.
Yeah, and first off, I love in the
Mhm.
beginning how fucking great everyone is at field stripping a motorcycle under intense pressure. Like they just can get those tires off, get the gas tank, and like fucking roll out in like 2 seconds. It's insane.
Right?
Wasteland's awesome, but I really like how in all of the action scenes George Miller directs, he is so good at like spatial awareness. During that chaotic
Yeah.
scene at the Bullet Farm, you still know where every character is in relation to each other, which is something that sometimes gets really muddled in an action scene. And I
hmm
really love how he's great at that because it just kind of makes things easier to follow and cooler because you're just like, oh, I know what's happening right now, and it's rad. And like, also, everyone here can fucking snipe the shit out of everyone. No one ever misses. It's amazing.
Yeah. And they're all such great characters too, right?
Mhm.
I feel like a big part of the reasons those scenes work as well as you do, aside from being shot incredibly by George Miller, is you really are invested in everyone, like you're really invested
Mhm.
in Furiosa and Praetorian Jack and Dementis. And Furiosa is obviously a character that we knew before and we have this pre-established relationship with, but we're getting to see all these other deeper sides to her, and then we're getting introduced to these other characters who I think both of them are really great. I wasn't as familiar with Tom Burke. Like I remember when we,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
saw
he's
it and
great.
you were like, that's my guy, Tom Burke. And I was like, I don't know who he is. And by the end of the movie, I was like, fuck yeah, Tom Burke.
Tom Burke's awesome. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. He really ruled. And they're
Mhm.
they're they're just different characters, right? They don't feel
Yeah.
like stock cutout characters at all. The relationships that they have, I love that little, you see it you see it in Furiosa when she gets reunited, or in Fury Road when she gets reunited with Valkyrie and they touch the heads.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
see
yeah.
it again with Furiosa's mom. Her, like, I'm like, is that her girlfriend? Like, I don't know who like that is, but like somebody who is like another protector. I think she mentions her in the next one. She says, "My protector was this person."
Oh,
But they do the head.
the
The
general lady who's
she's played by Chris Hemsworth's wife, Elsa
yeah,
Pataki,
who
who
also
plays dual
plays
roles in this, by
one
the
of
way.
the members of his war party.
Yeah, you
The
see
lady who
her.
gets her face cut open.
Yeah, you see her like get introduced and her face gets cut open, and she has those like
Mhm.
gnarly scars the whole movie. So
Yeah.
she's great in both roles. But yeah, she does that kind of head touch thing, and then
Mhm.
her and Jack do that, and like the
Mhm.
relationship between the two of them is so fast because they like obviously care so deeply about each other, and you're like, maybe it's romantic, but like maybe it's not, and it kind of doesn't matter because it's just like these two people who are like willing to do anything for each other. And then her relationship with Dementis, I think, is like also very, very interesting because he's like he's like this weird, fucked up father figure to her, like, and he like that's like Dementis in his own weird way, like really like cares about her, like he doesn't want to give her up, like he doesn't think of her in the same way that like Joe would think of like his wives or his followers or anything like that. he actually cares about her in a very fucked up way, you know? And I
Yeah.
think like that ending scene that they have, because I was kind of expecting, like, okay, this movie has had some really great action scenes. Furiosa ends with a really great action scene, but it ends with this like dialogue between the two of them that goes for like 10, 15 minutes. That is some of the best shit I've ever heard in my life. That ending is just so fucking powerful and good, where they're just kind of like debating on like hope and like his Dementis's whole like ideology, which is built around, just kind of nihilism, and just the world took everything from him. So fuck the world. I'm going to take things from other people. And like, there's nothing getting it back. And just, there's no point in hoping. And Furiosa kind of realizing that she could become like him and doesn't. And that sounds cliched, but it's not at all cliched with the writing that's done in that scene and just these really powerful performances between them.
Yeah, it plays off something that could be very easily just annoying. On paper, it's an annoying sort of concept, if that makes sense. But it
Yeah.
the way it's done and written and acted really makes it a believable sort of contrast between these two characters under an extreme situation. The
Mhm.
debate about hope has been done in other films, and it's been just awful. And it's done so well in this because it's basically Dementis talking and her staring at him, and every once in a while
Mhm.
pistol whipping him.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, and like apparently I found this out recently. That was the scene because, like we said, it was already written before that they were auditioning actors playing Max and Furiosa with in the original Mad Max. Like they were just reading that
huh.
scene, and it was just F and D, and like they would like it was like gender neutral. Like I think like
Mhm.
what's his name, Hawkeye was reading for
Jeremy
what's
Renner?
thank you, Jeremy Renner. He was one of the actors who read for Max, and I think he read the Furiosa part and whoever he was paired with.
Hmm.
So like, and which makes sense because like that is such a powerful, good scene. It's like, all right, let's test our actors out with this really good stuff. So right from the start, like you get who Furiosa is. Like it all informs, like we said, her character in the next one, and her arc in this is really spectacular, I think.
Yeah, because I like how it's sort of her constantly trying to get home, but realizing she can get home and help other people at the same time. Like some of the
Yeah.
hopefulness of Jack rubs off on her, and she becomes less of a loner through their relationship, and like how it informs the decision she makes in Fury Road. I also
Yeah.
love that she cuts her own arm off, walks that shit off, and builds herself a fucking rad robot arm. But like,
Yeah,
I
that was
I
fucking
know,
rad. Because you're
because
like,
I don't think I could do that.
yeah, no, I don't like. I could not 127 my hours myself on that fucking
Right.
hanging on that fucking war rig while I just watched the like person I love the most in the world just get fucking dragged to death by the same person who previously did the same thing like a couple of years ago. So yeah, it's good on her. And like like I know it's like some people are like, oh, like is Anya Taylor-Joy going to be able to like recapture like the performance, like Charlize Theron's so good and stuff like that, and like Anya Taylor-Joy seems so dainty, but like she is such a badass in this. Like she would kick my
She really
fucking
is.
ass. God, dude. And yeah, whether it's like her riding a motorcycle or sniping somebody or
Mhm.
fucking walking her arm off, she's doing a lot. But speaking of that scene where after she has to walk it off, I love that that's where we get the Max cameo. Cause like watching
Yeah,
it, I
you
was
and I
like,
both giggled.
yeah. Cause like watching it, I'm like, they gotta have Max in somewhere. Like I don't know how, but like they gotta do something. And I think that was the exact right, perfect way to do it. I heard a lot of people saying that like they thought Max saves her there, which like
Oh.
I did it all, right? Like that was not I did not make any sense to me because like why would he go drag her and then leave her with people who are harvesting like it seemed pretty clear that the people who are harvesting the maggots like found her and he was just kind of like looking because Max wasn't ready to get into that story, right?
Yeah, no, Max is not someone who goes out of his way to help other people if it doesn't
Right.
like
Not
he was
before
just
Fury
kind of
Road.
enjoying his morning.
Right, yeah, eating like some tuna or whatever. And something I found out was cool is that he was actually played because you don't that's not Tom Hardy, you just see him from behind,
Mhm.
but it's Jacob
The stunt
Tamori
double.
who yeah, was his stunt double in Fury Road. So I thought that was pretty cool
Yeah.
little thing in there. But yeah.
Another thing I love is how they like yada 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 an entire war. It's just fantastic
Right.
that suddenly there's just this montage of war at the end, and I was just like, this is so fucking rad because they do something similar in Mad Max 2, right?
Oh, I can't remember.
Isn't
It's been a minute since I've seen Mad Max 2.
Yeah, I know they do something similar in one of the earlier ones, and pardon my ignorance for not remembering exactly, but it was just like I really fucking loved that.
Right. Yeah. They're like, and I love the way like they do because the history man every once in a while will come on and do his
Yeah.
little voiceover, which I thought was really effective. And he's like, the War of the Roses, the War of and he's like the 100 Years War, the 100 Days War, and he's like East and West, North and South, and now the 40-day Wasteland War. While the montage is happening, you're like, fuck yeah, dude! Like this is rad. I don't know. I thought that history man character was really interesting, a really fascinating way to give exposition in a less than obvious way. Because most of this movie is exposition through visuals, but if you got to do exposition through, the script and something like that, especially over a movie that takes place over 15 years, there's a lot of shit that happens. That was a good way to do it, I thought.
I agree, 100%. Yeah, he was an interesting addition, and I like that he's also sort of like the keeper of Dementis' history. He's Dementis the thesaurus. He's like his dictionary. I love how the little ways that he sort of he helps Dementis with his own stupidity. It's kind of great.
Yeah, because Dement is just a boisterous figure, but he's got all these kind of dudes around him, including the history man. And I love that the movie ends with the history man being like, you might think this is, and it gives you kind of little different possible end. And then he's like, but it's like Clue. It's like, but this is how it actually happened. And he's like, Chris Hemsworth has a tree fucking growing out of him or whatever, which is just an insane fucking George Miller fucking thing that only he would think of. But I love that he's like, I heard it from Furiosa herself, which is okay, cool. This is the ending we're supposed to believe is real. But also, it's like saying I heard it from somebody who was there. It's a secondhand source. We don't know that's the fact for real, so we want to believe it. That's a really cool poetic ending, but it's the Wasteland. Who knows?
Right. It does strain believability. You know
Yeah.
what I'm looking for, but
Yeah.
I need a history man. But yeah, but it's just kind of perfect because she's carrying this stupid seed around her keeping it in her hair and her mouth, and just putting it in Dementis is just sort of perfect. So
Right.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah. It's a great.
I don't care if it's not literal.
The symbolism of this movie is so fucking good because you have, of course, that peach tree which represents her trying to kind of get back to the green place, and then you also have her tattooing her arm, where it's this is the map back there, and we know in this we know she's not going to get back to the green place, but she kind of makes a new green place in a way at the end of Fury Road, which is cool. But that. Because she has that choice where she's I can go back, but she's kind of torn between wanting to go back and wanting vengeance on Dementis. And that moment when, obviously we know she's going to lose her arm, as soon as we see her tattooing it, we're like, well, that's interesting because that's not going to last. And her losing the map back and kind of losing that drive to get back for a little while, and instead kind of being more fueled by the drive to get revenge on Dementis for the last third of the movie or something, last chapter or two, gets kind of replaced by the need for vengeance. But then instead she's okay, she kind of she gets her revenge sort of, but through her revenge she does something, the same thing that she does in Fury Road, and maybe this is intentional foreshadowing, knowing George Miller, it is where, okay, the vengeance turns into a sprouting of the new green place in the Citadel, which is that's exactly what happens. She doesn't get back to the green place. She loses that part of herself, literally and figuratively. But then she's able to use that piece of the green place that she had and she brings back the Volturi and everybody else to kind of recreate it at the Citadel.
Yeah, it's kind of the meme, why not both?
Yes,
but
yes.
With human tree.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, man, that would be I would almost be you know what, shoot me in the head. I don't want a tree growing out of me like that.
Yeah, no, I'm good. A lot of the stuff that happens in the Wasteland, I'm okay with, skipping out on.
Yeah. There's some, we said it was cool earlier, but actually it's probably pretty fucked up. The Wasteland.
It's cool sitting in a theater watching it, but I don't want to deal with that much sand or getting eaten by dogs or, all of that.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I noticed this time, that when like there's all these like things that are just like small little things that like you don't even
Mm.
notice really because this is the third time I watched it because I watched it in IMAX with you and then I
Mhm.
went to go see it in Dolby because I was like those are like the two kind of big formats and actually most of the movie this money that this movie did make came from like Dolby's and IMAXs and so I think about like 45% of its domestic gross, which like makes sense because you want to watch this movie in like the biggest coolest theater you can. Anyway, kind of lost my train of thought, but like my point was that yeah, watching it, rewatching this time, you see the dog like it's a little puppy that she has early on. It's like she has
Mm.
that little, and then like later on, there are like these dogs that are like torturing it. So there's all these like little things in there that are references to either things that will happen later on in the movie, or they're setting things up that will happen in Fury Road. So it's really masterfully just like he doesn't ever draw your attention to it, or he very rarely does. He'll just put stuff in
Mhm.
there, and you're like, man, this is just such a complete world where a lot of these movies like this feel, like they kind of start and stop on the screen, whereas this feels like no, there's so many more stories happening that we're not even seeing.
Yeah, it's so fully visualized, just like Fury Road was.
Yeah.
The Doof Warrior is never called the Doof Warrior in the movie, but like they just gave everyone a backstory, so we know that's the Doof Warrior, right? The way they must have just sat down and just basically plotted everything. Every single character has a backstory, even if they're only on screen for like 2 seconds, is
Hmm.
just insane. The amount
Yeah.
of time it must have taken. Like, holy fuck, George Miller, you're fucking amazing.
Right, yeah, and like it's one of those things where like if this movie had came out in like or like Fury Road had come out in like the '90s or the 2000 like early 2000s when it was first trying to get made,
Mm.
probably would not have been what it was. It probably would not have been this like epic, one of the greatest action movies of all time, and Furiosa would not have been written in the time. But he worked on this for 15 years, so just like there's going to be so much world, and these movies they were not like traditionally written. They were like storyboarded, and
Hmm.
I was listening to the audiobook for Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, which I highly recommend, by the way, if you're like a movie fan, if you love Mad Max. And towards the end of that, they start to kind of talk about because the book came out before the movie, this movie, but it talks about like okay, like what happened with Mad Max, and then okay, now George is starting to get ready to make Furiosa, and he would literally like had like toys and like a diorama, like okay, cool, this is how the action's gonna work. This is that. That's why all the visual storytelling is so coherent. It makes so much sense. You're getting so much world building through the visuals because he all meticulously planned it through like toys and storyboards and stuff like that, and at the same time, he was like hanging out with Edgar Wright, and he's like, last night in Soho, so Anya Taylor-Joy, she's pretty good, right? And he was just like, yeah, dude, you should hire her. And he's like, okay, cool, I will. And the rest is history.
Yeah, fantastic casting there. Both her and the kid they got to play young her. Like, holy
Yes,
shit, both of them are
yes,
amazing.
they're both so good. Ayala Brown is her name, and yeah, she is like, they're both fucking phenomenal. And
Hmm.
one thing that I thought was really cool that I didn't even know until doing some research on this is that they start to blend their face digitally over the course of the
Oh,
movie, right?
that
So,
makes sense.
right, like because you like when you hear that, you're like, oh yeah, totally see that. Like the one
Yeah.
scene where I kind of like noticed it is when it's still the younger actress Ayala Brown playing her on in that like scene where she's like doing the war. I'm pretty sure it's her, but she's like doing the war rig is like or the truck is being lifted and she's like working as the dogman or whatever. And
Oh,
that's
okay.
like
Yeah.
80. Yeah, that's still Brown, but Anya Taylor Joy's face is like 80% digitally on. So it's one of those things like one of the first couple scenes that like 30% put it on, and then like in Anya Taylor Joy's first scene, they still have like Brown's eyes on there. And then
Okay.
that's kind of like completes the transition, which is I thought like really phenomenal and a cool like because people love to praise these movies for their use of practical effects, which obviously they're great. But George Miller isn't
Hmm.
like a neophyte. He's not like, well, I'm only going to do it practically. He's like, if there's something that can be done digitally that really works, I'll do it. But at the same time, he's
Yeah.
like, if I can't do it digitally, that's why Charlize Theron didn't come back. He's like, I don't want the whole uncanny valley the whole time. So I'm gonna,
Thank God.
yeah, that would have been rough. The fucking I don't know if you ever saw the last Twilight movie, but the fucking Twilight baby is they put like a like a teenage actress's face on a fucking like an actual baby, and it's the weirdest thing you've ever seen in your life.
Okay, I don't think I have seen it, but I fucking am now.
Yeah, look it up. It's somebody who's like famous now. I can't remember who it is, but plays Nesme, I think is the character's name. But yeah, so it's fucking it's very uncanny valley. It's weird when that shit happens, and Miller just knows when to, because there's a lot more digital stuff in this than the first one, but he knows when to use it and when not to. I think.
Yeah, there's definitely some like digital stuff in like Fury Road. Like I bet that sandstorm isn't real.
Oh yeah, that's definitely digitally created. Yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, I really think, speaking of like how it's two actors playing Furiosa, I was like kind of shocked at how long it was Brown playing Furiosa. Because I remember when we saw it in the theater, I was like, man, I kind of have to go to the bathroom, and there's Anya Taylor-Joy isn't even shown up in this movie yet. So I feel like it's almost like it's like a two-hander, but with three actors, because you have Furiosa, but like Dementis, especially in the first half, is like almost the main character in the way that Furiosa was in the first movie, which is interesting. But then Taylor-Joy shows up, so it's like this weird. It's like I was like really shocked. I checked it this time; it was exactly an hour in. Is that scene where I was talking about with like where she's like the dog man or whatever? So it's like that was like a bold move to be like, okay, yeah, your main actress, like one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood, who is like, you know, on all the posters and everything, doesn't show up until the 1 hour mark of the movie, which
that's crazy.
Yeah, but
and it works so well, but it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like we said, Hemsworth also really good in this, and
just enjoying the shit out of himself. It's fantastic.
I kind of love when an actor who's kind of like known for one thing, one kind of role, even when he's not Thor, he's like usually kind of like just like a badass hero guy, you know, like in Black Hat or like fucking whatever, Men in Black 3, whatever movie it might be. You kind of know, like, okay, like here's Hemsworth as one of the last young movie stars, but he's like a movie star. He's like the guy who's like the main character. And in this, he's like totally playing against type and having a ball with it. I love, like, you know, like Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder, or, you know, like Chris Hemsworth in like Knives Out, when these guys get to just fucking just play something totally off type. And like he's like, yeah, give me a big nose and weird fucking teeth, and I'm just gonna be this insane guy who just like fucking hates everything. And it's really good because he's funny, but he's also like kind of an idiot, but not totally. Like you can see why he like has his power, and he's also like really fucking tragic. Like him having like carrying around the you know, the doll that belonged to. Yeah, the teddy bear that belonged to his like dead kid, you know, and then he gives that to Furiosa, which is like, it's like it's what I was talking about. Like he loves her in his own fucked up way. He's like, this is something that like means so much to him. Like it's this one like kind of like thing that he allows from when he was still like a good person, and he gives it to her, and then he angrily takes it back from her when she like says he's not her dad. It's so, that character is just so fucking messed up, but really, really interesting. And Hemsworth is just having a meal with it.
Yeah, you can tell he just loved every second of being on that set. But yeah, he's a very interesting sort of counterpart to a lot of the villains we see in like the Mad Max world, right? Because like Tina Turner kind of just ruled a city, Morton Joe kind of just ruled a city, and he's just a thug. He's a charismatic thug who managed to pull all these people together, and as soon as he stops moving, they realize he's just a thug. Which is why one of the reasons why the Octoboss leaves, right? Because not only did he betray some of his guys, but Chris Hemsworth sucks. Like the gas town falls apart almost immediately, you know? And he's just great. And he uses the word bossority, and it's fucking amazing. And I need to use it more often.
Right. We need to start incorporating some of Dementis's language into our everyday lives, I think. Because, But like, I think you bring up a really good point that, like, the Mad Max villains, they're never that deep. They're never, like, that interesting. And I think in a lot of ways, Max isn't necessarily either, in a way that both Dementis and Furiosa are. Like, this is like by far, I think, the most character-driven Mad Max movie, because Max is just kind of like a gruff guy who's out in the wasteland, and he has a character arc, but and then
He's
the
just a
villains.
survivor. That's all he does.
Exactly, yeah, he's just a survivor, and the villains are like you mentioned, Tina Turner. She just owns the city.
Mm-hmm.
Both of the villains, played by Hugh Keysburn,
Yeah.
Toe Cutter and Joe, are just fucking monsters. Lord Humongous is just a big mean. They're all just like big mean
yeah.
monsters, like they're all just terrible people. You wouldn't be able to have that last scene where they're like spouting philosophies about life and nihilism and stuff like that for 15 minutes with Immortan Joe. Immortan Joe, he just exists to be like, remember me, and rips his face off. Whereas when she says remember me to Dementis, that kicks off their whole conversation. He's like little D, and he's like weirdly proud of her in that moment. So yeah, like I really liked that this movie went a different route in terms of like giving us a focus on like making it a character study almost.
Yeah, it's very much a character study of sort of two parallel characters. She could very easily have turned into Dementis, but she chooses not to.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
awesome. I also like that she takes the teddy bear back, because fuck it, that's her teddy bear.
Right, yes, that was fucking great. And yeah, like she really could have. And like that last scene hits so hard because he's like, yeah, you're like basically the daughter that I raised, essentially. Like, he doesn't say that, but it's so many words. And he's like, you're just like me. I wanted revenge on the world, and that's why I did these horrible things, and now you wanted revenge on me, and you can kill me, and then that's gonna be it. Like, you're gonna just become consumed by revenge, and then you like have nothing left. And she sees that, and she sees that in herself, and she goes another way. That is the start of her journey. That gets her to the place where she's at the beginning of Fury Road. It's like you said earlier, at the beginning of this, she's just trying to get back to the green place. Whereas in Furiosa, she's like, I'm going to get back to the green place, but I'm going to bring these abused women. I'm going to like save these people. And then at the end, she saves not just those people, but saves like the whole civilization, like Morton Joe's entire citadel. When you watch them back to back, that arc really hits even stronger, I feel like, because it's like you're getting these different chunks of Furiosa's life, and then that is like, cool, this next chunk, which is why I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I liked that they had the scenes from Furiosa in the end credits of from Fury Road in the end credits, because it feels like, okay, we know there's still this emotional journey. Like, they've set all this stuff about the green place up, and Rictus and Immortan Joe and all these things that are to be resolved. And there's this whole other movie, and it's like, it felt very fulfilling sitting in the theater and watching an abridged version of what we got. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I liked it. How did you feel about the little credits montage they did?
I thought it was cool, but it also made me like, I was sitting there thinking like, fuck, why the fuck did they not re-release Fury Road at the same time? Because I would 100% have done a back-to-back screening of both of them. But but yeah, I liked it. I didn't have a very strong opinion on it either way. It just made me really want to rewatch Fury Road, to be honest. And again, I feel like they should have re-released it.
Right, because they do that shit all the time, right? They're fucking re-releasing. They're re-releasing the Batman because the Penguin is coming out. That's a TV show. They're gonna like release
A24's been releasing a lot of their old catalog on IMAX.
Yeah.
A lot of these studios are doing that.
Right, and like when Oppenheimer was coming out, they re-released fucking Tenet, which is not even like, it's just from the same filmmaker. It's not even like the same series or anything, but they're like, you know what? Because like a lot of people were like, oh, we didn't get to see that, and Nolan's all in the theater like Nolan wanted. Nolan's all about is like watching like the 70 millimeter IMAX or whatever, which is admittedly a fucking great way to watch a movie. I did watch Oppenheimer in that format, and I was like, okay, you've got a point. But obviously we saw this in true IMAX too, not in 70 millimeter, but still pretty fucking cool. So yeah, like they really should have done some like re-release where a week or two before re-release Fury Road. You get some money from just that showing, and you build up the hype to this movie. You get the people interested. You remind people, oh yeah, this is one of the greatest fucking action movies of all time, from a guy who's just like at the peak of his game, who's been doing this, shooting crazy shit in the desert for fucking 40 years now or whatever. And we're getting another one of these movies. It just makes sense, and I don't know, Warner Bros. Is just really fucking dumb, I think is what it is. They're canceling
Yeah.
movies, This movie didn't come out for a while because of all the legal disputes.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to that audiobook, it's really interesting because it's Fury Road is getting made, and then they like stop production on it with it has no beginning and no end, and the only reason it got a beginning and an end shot was because like there was a new studio head that got hired at Warner Brothers, who by the way is not there anymore, and now the new studio heads David Zaslav and all these people are just like, yeah, fucking cancel Kaido versus Acme. Everybody wants to watch it, whatever. Like fucking don't bother. Like it's just some of the decision making by these fucking big wigs really pisses me off.
Yeah, that's fair. Apparently, Beetlejuice was supposed to go directly to Max, but Tim Burton was like, "Fuck no," and stood up to
Right,
Zaslav,
yeah.
and that's why I went to theaters. These decisions these people are making are baffling.
Right, like Alien Romulus was supposed to be a straight to
Hulu.
movie. Yeah, which is
Yeah,
what they did
thank
for
God
Predator.
that got released in theaters.
Right, yeah, because that was fucking rad as shit in the theater, and like, because it was one of those things that like Disney picked up the rights to these franchises because Fox had them. They're like, okay, we'll make a Predator movie, we'll make an Alien movie, we'll just put them out on Hulu. But I think part of the reason because people saw Predator and they're like, this is a really fucking good movie, let's put it out in theaters. It makes sense. You're gonna make a lot more money that way too, and then you can always release it in a couple months on your streaming service anyway. So I don't know.
Or like a couple weeks if you're Borderlands.
Right? Yes. Yeah, because even if you don't make a lot of money at the box office, you still make something. Especially when a movie costs upwards of $300 million, $375 million. I think as the quote I saw, I got bandied about. This movie only made 175, but that's 175 more than zero if it would have just dropped straight to Max.
Yeah, true. Very true. Yeah. God, it's sad that it didn't do better. But
Yeah, it's really a bummer.
It really
like,
is.
So, like, other than the stuff we've already talked about, do you think that there is a particular reason like this one really underperformed?
I think it's sort of part of it's got to be the historical thing, because Mad Max Fury Road didn't do well, and this is 9 years later, so it was already sort of a niche film to begin with.
Right.
It was dropped. It was what, May?
I want to say June.
Or was it April?
Let me see. It was definitely later than April. It was
Okay.
May. You're right. It was May.
Got it.
Late May 24th came out in the U.S.
Okay, so it was sort of right before a summer blockbuster season. I mean, Garfield didn't help. But yeah, I think it's mostly the historical thing.
Yeah, because it's like Blade Runner, right? How when Blade Runner 2049 came out and people were like, "Oh, that bombed really hard at the box office. People love Blade Runner." And you're like, "Yeah, but like Blade Runner, the first one also did bad at the box office. Over the years, it became a classic, but it was never like a huge success in the same way that none of the Mad Max movies have ever been huge successes." And like this, it's interesting because like you say, it comes out like before the summer movie season, really, but it is kind of almost in the middle. And this has been one of the weirdest summer movies from a box office perspective, like ever. Because when this movie comes out and it's bombing, like we already mentioned, the Fall Guy bombs. A lot of those movies because I think technically the summer movies starts in like April or like late April, or like sometimes if Marvel decides to release an Avengers in March, starts a little earlier. But that like a bunch of movies came out, they all did really bad. Planet of the Apes is like the only one that did okay, and it wasn't like phenomenal. It was just like a successful movie. And like everything else was like, people were like, there was all these like think pieces that were coming out and like articles like, oh my gosh, movies are fucking dead, right? Movies are done. These big movies that we thought were going to perform huge, they're all crashing and burning at the box office. Nobody wants to go back to the movies. Movies were already on live support, and COVID fucking killed it. The writer's strike killed it. Like, we're fucking done. And then fucking Inside Out 2 and fucking Deadpool and Wolverine come out and make like $2 billion each. And people are like, just kidding, movies are back. And like even like Bad Boys Ride or Die made shit tons of money.
Yeah.
Even Twisters is an interesting one because it did really well domestically but not internationally. But like it's just weird because the back half of the summer was so loaded with hits that like everything people were saying I think even myself included a little bit. I think I mentioned I was like, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this movie. Things have not been going well, but then just gangbusters. And this was like kind of like the one movie that was the end of like people being like, oh man, doom and gloom, like movies are fucked. And then it's just like, no, movies are back. Movies are like back and making more money than ever.
Yeah. I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine was always going to make a fuckload of money.
Yeah.
There was not a single universe where that didn't.
Right. Which is like, I don't know, because I think a lot of people were like, oh yeah, is Marvel done? Like, Captain Marvel lost a bunch of money, and like the last couple of Marvel things haven't been as good, and there was a lot of naysayers, and I was like, I don't know, it's my number one pick of the summer movie age. Like, Deadpool and Wolverine, those movies make a lot of fucking money, so.
Yeah, I think the test for Marvel is going to be the next Captain America. Depending on how well that does, is going to be the sort of show the trend for the future.
Right, because you don't have Chris Hemsworth coming back, but I still think it's Captain America. People are going to see that shit,
Probably. I mean, I wouldn't bet against it, but I think it'll be interesting to see, how much leg it has.
Right, yeah.
It's going to do a great opening weekend, but how well is it going to do after that? Also, it's being dropped February 14th, which is random.
Yeah, I feel like the Marvel movies that are like not the big summer hit like that, they do release movies around there. Like I think that a lot of the Thor movies, except for the most recent one, got released in February. So they do that from time to time. I feel like because especially when they're coming out with like 3 or 4 movies a year. This year they only had one, so they're dropping in the summer. But when they have just kind of space, I think Black Panther also came out on February 14th, if I'm not mistaken, or around that date. So it's something they definitely like to do, kind of be the alternative program to a lot of Valentine's Day kind of romance movies, I guess. But yeah,
what's more romantic than superhero?
I mean, nothing as far as I'm concerned. But to swivel back to Mad Max for a second, I've got a question. I've got a question for you. This is something that I was very confused on when I first saw the movie, and I have not gotten any clarification as to what the fuck was happening in the 2 more times I watched it. Is why does when he's got the old boss of the gas town, he's got that like spike at his back. Why does Chris Hemsworth have those things clamped on his nipples that tear his nipples off? And he's like, ooh, and he's like, why? What is that purpose of that? Do you have? Because I am baffled.
So I'm gonna go with he was roaming around that guy's like beautiful water tower abode, and he just happened to find these nipple clamps and was like, you know what? I think this is going to complete my look. I think I should just wear these. And then he did. Yeah. Why did he tie him to the boss's head? Because again, he had a long chain and he didn't want to do what Peter did in Deadpool and Wolverine. So he just attached it to the other guy.
Right. Because then he just has no nipples for the rest of the movie, which is a look.
Yeah. I mean, less chafing.
I guess so, yeah, on the waistline.
If he ever wore a shirt.
I mean, I feel like he didn't. He usually had that cool vest on, but yeah.
He did. That was a rad vest.
That was a very cool vest.
I also like how his cloak changed colors, as it got more and more stained.
Right, yeah. It's interesting because like his cloak goes through these different like colors and like it starts as like this kind of like white majestic thing, and then it gets that red dye in it, and by the end it's like black at the top, and because it's been so many years. And I thought that was really interesting, and the way that like it's part of this whole theme of how Dementus just keeps reinventing himself, like he's like Dementus, and then he becomes the Red Dementus, and then he's like, it's just a kind of a self-aggrandizing bullshit that he does, but it, like it kind of speaks to like the power of symbols, which obviously we've talked about the symbols in the movie, the symbols that he invents for himself, and then he becomes the Dementus, the great Dementus, and then he's like, you have made me the Dark Dementus.
Maybe he was going to become Dementus the nipple clamped. Maybe that was going to be his next reinvention. And then it just kind of backfired when that giant stick went through that guy's head.
Right. Yeah, was it a way for him to be like, all right, I got to hold this because this'll make me want to keep holding it, because if I let go, then it's going to rip my nipples off. It was just like a way for him to like, be like, all right.
It could be, it was a motivation factor.
Yeah, that I think that might be it. I finally cracked it after watching it 3 times and doing a podcast. So
yeah,
mystery solved. Thank you, Marion.
Also, I love the throwaway line where that's Immortan Joe's brother, and like Immortan Joe just doesn't care that he died.
He's just because
it just shows how like disposable Immortan Joe sees everyone.
Right, exactly. Like Martin Joe, like we said, he's just a monster. Like, he doesn't care about people. He doesn't see people as people. Think people are just things to him. He's like when he says like he call the women that he his wives or whatever like are his property. He says that the baby in her stomach is property, and Dementis, for his many faults, he is somebody who cares about people in a weird, fucked up, perverse way. But he does care about very few people. Maybe just one person, honestly. But he does seem to like have some. He does care about his like inner circle, like we said.
There's that line from the History Man where he's like, if you're useful to him, he'll keep you around.
Yeah. So once again, I think that just makes him a very different, interesting villain than anyone else we've seen in these Mad Max movies. But yeah.
Oh, one thing we didn't really talk about, but I do really love the scene where Dementis pulls up to the Citadel and they're just like, pick out any of these guys, and like they choose one, and he just immediately sacrifices himself, and you could just see Dementis being like, "Oh shit, I don't have control over my people like that."
Right? Yeah, he's just like, "Oh shit," because he's trying to like do. He's like, "Ah, yes, my Smeg will choose." He's trying to like be like, like I'm just like as powerful as you, and I love how he like he makes that like populist play, like rise up against these guys, and it's like, and on one hand you're like, man, would Dementis be a better ruler than like a Morton Joe? Like maybe the people would get water occasionally. I don't know though.
Like once he remembered he had water, like
right, yeah, because it's like I think that like I don't think obviously we know, seeing how he ran his shit, that he is not a good leader.
No,
he would not be as good as running things as Morton Joe, but also like he might be like, even if it's like for his own fucked up reasons, giving back to the people more than Morton Joe. So I don't know. Like I'm not saying I'm rooting for him, but I'm just like between these two guys who both suck a lot. I'm glad that Furiosa like is the one who takes over the Citadel at the end. But like you're just kind of like, yeah, I don't like the Morton Joe either. Super sad that the gas town got taken over and like the Bolt farm got attacked.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about Dementis, but he's not going to make me shave my head and paint myself white,
Except for that one scene when he kind of slaps on the paint or whatever. But other than that,
that was because he needed a ruse.
Exactly. I love a good ruse. I love Dementis when he has ruse there. So yeah,
he had a sense of theatricality that very underappreciated.
Yes, he really did, and he was a very good public speaker. He would bust out that microphone and just like, all right, yeah, you're very charismatic. I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, it makes sense that he had this giant horde.
Yeah. Oh my god. So I made this meme the other day. It's the dumbest it was the dumbest thing, but I posted onto like the Mad Max subreddit, and it got like 2,000 something upvotes. And it was just like the caption I put was do you have a plan for running Gastown? It was just a picture of Dementis, and it's just like, I have the concept of a plan.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
it was kind of show up and hope for the best.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else on Furiosa that we haven't touched on yet?
Wait, you just rewatched Fury Road. Does Valkyrie survive Fury Road?
He doesn't, which is kind of a bummer. It is a really impactful, powerful moment when they meet back up. I was almost crying watching this time, which is something like I was like, cool. Like seeing it before, I was like, cool, but like it was like, oh man. The thing is, she was supposed to survive, but the actress, I can't remember what happened with her, if she got pregnant or something happened, or she was going on like a world tour. Like, I can't remember what it was, but she had to essentially like drop out of the role. And George Miller was like, well, what if I just rewrote it so that you're, instead of like, because you can't go back and shoot those last scenes, what if I just have you shoot a scene where you die instead?
Okay.
Yeah. But
I couldn't remember. Thank you.
Yeah. But that was one of the things that they talked about in Blood, Sweat, and Chrome. But yeah, she's fucking great. It was that moment when she sees them and all the Volteri. What is it? The Volteri? Is that it?
Think so.
Volvani, maybe.
Volvani, yeah.
Volvani, yeah.
It's very vulva.
It's very And I think it was supposed to be even like more vaginally like related, like when they had the original script, but like WB was like, you can call him Volvani. That's good enough. But yeah, like
lame WB.
Right, bloop. But yeah, just seeing them come back at the end, and that one old badass lady, and she's got her big old bag of seeds and shit. You're like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, God, and yeah, because she does. By the way, Valkyrie does go out like a fucking badass because she falls. Yeah, she falls off.
She gets run over, right?
Well, she falls off the truck and like saves another of the like people who fell off, and then she like sees Immortan Joe coming at her, and she starts like shooting him, like she's got the rifle or whatever, and then she dodges out of the way, and then she's like shooting at him from behind, but now because she's like looking ahead, she doesn't see the people eater swerve, and like the people eater runs her over.
Fucking people eater, man, that
Right.
guy. I also like when he like grabbed his nipples after Chris Hemsworth's nipples get ripped.
He's like, ooh, all right, I'm kind of into this.
God, that guy. Oh man. Also, Scrotus, worst name for a kid ever.
Terrible name. Like, you're like, Rictus, pretty bad name. I can do worse. I like, by the way, that, like, and I think we talked about this after we saw it, how it, like, kind of fakes you out when it does, like, we know what you're expecting from a prequel, because Rictus is not in the original. He's not in Fury Road. Oh, sorry, Scrotus
Rictus is.
Yeah, Scrotus.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scrotus is not in. It's a stupid sentence to say. Scrotus is not in Fury Road. So you're like, okay, cool. He's gonna die at the end, and when he doesn't, you're like, oh, way to subvert some prequel expectations.
Yeah, no, that was kind of cool. And like, I wonder what happened, because George Miller has it written down on like a napkin somewhere.
Right. There's a whole like other 20-minute short that it's gonna be dedicated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Grotus's adventures.
So my last question then is, I guess, do you think this is the best prequel ever made, or what would be some other ones?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's some really good ones. Like Prey is a really good prequel.
Temple of Doom, although that doesn't, like, it's technically a prequel, but it kind of is cheating a lot because it doesn't make any sense as a prequel. It just happens to happen a year before the other one because he didn't want to use Nazis again 2 movies in a row.
I mean, that's fair. Nazis have diminishing returns.
You can use them in only the odd-numbered Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah, that's true. That should be the rule. I don't know. What about like the prequel aspects in Godfather Part 2? Those are really good.
Fair. See, I think the best prequels are the ones that are like not doing the prequel stuff usually, like that are like, because you mentioned Prey, and it's not like you're like, it's just another Prey movie, like it's just like another Predator movie. It happens before. Yeah. And Indiana Jones, you don't find out how he, I mean, I guess you do in The Last Crusade, but it's not like, oh, you found out like how he became the Indiana Jones that he did. It's just like, oh no, like this is just a movie that happens before it, and this is very, integral to the character that we see in Fury Road, but, that's because it was written before or the same time as it, and also it's a spin-off too. It's not a pure prequel.
Yeah.
It's not I would think I would be less, and I know The Wasteland is apparently a prequel. I would be less interested in a Mad Max prequel than a Furiosa prequel. I would much rather see just another Mad Max sequel.
Yeah, same. Just, him showing up helping someone inadvertently and then leaving.
Yeah.
I love that as like a main character. I don't know. It's just so simplistic. It's fantastic. But yeah, I don't know. It's really, I think I agree with you. The ones that are the best prequels are the ones that don't do like the Solo thing and like explain, where his stupid dice came from or how he got his name, or not that I don't like Solo.
Solo's great.
I enjoyed it. But I do feel like it tried to explain too much that didn't need to be explained.
Right.
And
like what I said about the Solo when we covered it like years ago now, was that it feels like that scene from Last Crusade, but a feature-length version of it. Like that scene works because it tells you who Indy is and like why he like how he got his stuff and all that stuff in a cute, fun way. It's not stretched. Like if that had been the whole movie, like if we had just gotten a prequel with River Phoenix, I wouldn't like it as much. I like that it's like this tells you who Indy is, tells you about the relationship with his dad, which is going to be very important in the movie you're about to watch. Yeah, I think that that about sums it up.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think well, I mean, I like the Young Indiana Jones show, but I don't think it's not like that scene. Just
right.
It's just like Indy in World War I and stuff like that. But
yeah, it's just like he's riding with Pancho Villa or like playing fucking jazz in a club or whatever,
making out with Mata Hari. You know.
As you do.
Played by Catherine Zeta-Jones,
right,
which is like fantastic casting.
That was like
holy
one,
shit. Well
right,
done.
Honestly, like that was one of the first things that like she was ever in. It was even before The Phantom, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Time-wise.
But yeah, I don't know. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
Can't think of any, but I hope we arrive in Valhalla shiny and chrome.
Shiny and chrome. Yes. Thank you, sage words of wisdom. But yeah, this is the
volley knocker. The spinning ball thing is so fucking cool. I want one on the back of my Prius.
That would be cool. And I love that, like, when it like catches the fucking Octoboss and it's just fucking the tentacles are all spinning around and shit like that. That was so fucking rad. Like that was one of the few digital effects. Like usually when they had the war rig, they were actually like using the war rig, but they did digitally do that one, which makes sense because like that was such a fucking cool badass effect. And yeah, that was like they do such a good job of like building up your anticipation to it because they're like like the little guy's like, should I use the Dominaka? And then it's like, not yet. And then he's like, so they're like, what is this thing? And the fight keeps happening and it's building up and he's about to get him and he's about to use it, but then he gets shot. So she has to like Anya Taylor-Joy to like fucking slide on the thing and she like hits it and then oh my god, fucking beautiful, great shit, George Miller. Great cap to an incredible action scene.
That scene is just so fucking great. I fucking want one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see that at the back of your Prius. I would never tailgate you again.
It would be awesome.
Oh, man.
Do you think it's street legal?
No, I do not. I think you would get pulled over very quickly.
Fair.
Well, Marion, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast. I'm really excited. I'm really glad that we got to talk about this because I had a gap in my schedule. I had just been talking about Mortal Engines, and I was like, Mortal Engines is kind of like, there was a lot of weird similarities between them, where it's like this weird post-apocalyptic world. There's this killer, like, 10-minute opening sequence. Junkie XL did the score, so I was like, it got me thinking about it a lot, and I was like, man, as much as I love, and I think it's a very underrated movie, Mortal Engines, I'm like, Furiosa, though, just kind of does everything that movie does, but, like, to another level.
Okay, I haven't seen Mortal Engines, but should I watch it?
I mean,
it sounds bonkers. I like bonkers.
It is absolutely bonkers. I mean, it's also got like a badass female lead with kind of a what's deformity, I guess. I don't know. Like she's also like been scarred by like a traumatic incident. So instead of her arm, it's just this big scar on her face. So I think Mortal Engines kind of fucking rules. Like it is a ridiculous movie, but it's also got like fucking Hugo Weaving being like super evil, and then Stephen Lang as this Frankenstein, like immortal fucking zombie with glowing eyes that is called the Shrike, and he's like, it's fucking so weird. I want everyone to watch that movie. So yes, please watch that movie, and we can talk about it.
All right, I'll check it out. Is it streaming anywhere?
Yeah, it's on Hulu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No trouble. Yeah, and because it was a Fox movie, so it's gonna be on Hulu forever now, theoretically.
Oh yeah. I can't wait for them to make the Predator a Disney princess. They better do it.
Right? Come on, it's about time.
Yeah, they need a musical number. Let's do this shit.
But yeah, this was a blast. Marion, I know you don't really you're not a podcaster, you don't really have any social media. Is there anything you wanted to pitch?
Let's see. Hacks just won for best comedy. If you haven't watched Hacks, watch Hacks.
I do.
Fucking great. And Gene Smart is 10 out of 10.
I love Gene Smart. Yeah, so I that has been a show that I've been meaning to watch. Hacks, and especially once it won, I was like, okay, I gotta watch it. And also, like, props to Shogun for taking home all those fucking Emmys, because God, Shogun fucking rules.
Right? And Lamar Morris won for Fargo, and that was kind of awesome.
Yeah. So good stuff.
It was a good night.
Yeah. But yeah, just to mention anybody out there, thanks all for listening, and you can check out some more stuff that I do as well. These episodes come out every other Monday. On opposite Mondays, I do another show with my buddy Damien called the Midnight Film Society, which is more of just kind of a reactional, what we've been watching show. Furiosa is actually I think the first movie that I've talked about on both shows, that I've reviewed on both of them, because it's so new. But yeah, check that out. Just look up Midnight Film Society anywhere. If you want to follow us on all the socials, Underrated Movie Podcast. If you can give us 5 stars on whatever app you're listening on, that really helps the show get noticed a lot. If you can rate us, leave us a review. And for the true diehards, we have the Underrated Movie Podcast Patreon, where once a month, it's on a small hiatus right now, but once a month I do a episode of a bonus podcast. And you and I in real life have talked about this, but I haven't mentioned it on the podcast, really. Maybe I have at this point, but going to be starting a new bonus podcast called Across the Second Dimension in 2025. You and I know we've already talked about going to talk about Jaws 3D, because it's going to be, the premise is that we will watch a movie that came out in 3D and see how it holds up in 2D. So we're going to be talking about a lot of great and not so great 3D movies, see how they hold up. So go to underratedmoviepodcast.com or patreon.com/underratedmoviepodcast or underratedmoviepodcast.com to get all of that stuff. But yeah, one more time, thank you everybody for listening, and thank you, Miriam, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.